Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're dissecting a massive geopolitical puzzle that doesn't just dominate our daily news feeds, it actually impacts global security, energy prices, and international alliances. We are going to look at the true anatomy of escalation and figure out exactly why the Middle East constantly finds itself in conflict.
So why does the Middle East constantly find itself locked in this endless cycle of escalation? Well, we aren't just here to read you today's headlines. We want to look under the hood and uncover the actual engine of instability. What are the hidden structural mechanics that keep this cycle spinning year after year?
Just take a look at July 2026, for example. We've got reports from the UM and Fair Observer showing the US and Iran trading deadly strikes right in the crucial Strait of Hormuz. At the exact same time, Iran is essentially turning the Kurdistan region into a proxy battlefield. And meanwhile, new U.S.-Syria diplomacy is signaling a major shift in military responsibilities as Washington tries to reduce its footprint. These are massive, rapid shifts, and to truly grasp what they mean, we're going to need a roadmap.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll cover the 2026 escalation reality, shattering the regional balance, the Middle East Cold War, the concept of the fierce state, and finally, a complex web of alliances.
All right, Part 1, the 2026 escalation reality, navigating symptoms of deeper crises.
It is absolutely crucial to recognize that the headlines we see today, the strikes, the proxy battles, they are merely symptoms of a much deeper, decades-long structural crisis. Now, consider this astonishing statistic. The Middle East and North Africa possess just over 5% of the world's population. 5%. Yet the region disproportionately dominates our global news cycles, diplomatic efforts, and international security concerns. And that isn't a coincidence. It's the direct result of historical traumas, an absence of regional integration, and an intense struggle for resources and hegemony.
Moving into Section 2, shattering the regional balance, the historical triggers of modern instability.
Let's move to the timeline and see how this builds up, because power vacuums are the historic triggers of modern instability here. Consider the buildup from the IMED report. In 1990, the invasion of Kuwait and the subsequent Gulf War radically altered power distribution. Then we hit a massive turning point in 2003 with the U.S. invasion of Iraq. Fast forward to 2011, and the Arab awakening completely upends the internal stability of authoritarian regimes across the board. And that directly sets the stage for the deeply fragmented, ongoing regional crises we are witnessing right now in 2026.
The 2003 invasion of Iraq is really a critical turning point. The removal of Saddam Hussein essentially broke the region's internal balances. It transformed Iraq into a quasi-failed state, fueled extreme sectarian violence, and maybe most importantly, it removed the primary wall containing regional hegemonic ambitions. This is exactly what allowed Iran to rapidly rise and expand its influence across the whole region. That brings us to Section 3, the Middle East Cold War, invisible forces driving physical conflicts.
To really understand these invisible forces, we have to look at the realist theory of international relations. It sounds academic, but it's pure survival logic. When states face a serious threat, they basically have two options. They either team up to balance power, or they align with the threat, what we call bandwagoning, just to avoid getting damaged. In the Middle East, this creates an intense security dilemma. It's this constant state of hyperparanoia where states are always reacting out of vulnerability. Now, when you apply that survival logic, the confusing geopolitical landscape actually starts to cleanly categorize itself into three distinct, competing blocks. First, you have the Iranian Shiite bloc, led by Iran, heavily backing the Syrian regime, actors in Baghdad, and Hezbollah. Against them, you have the Saudi Sunni bloc, led by Saudi Arabia, allied with Egypt, the UAE, Bahrain, and Jordan. Finally, you have a third, albeit somewhat weakened bloc, led by Qatar, supporting various Muslim Brotherhood-linked organizations. Recognizing these three pillars is basically the master key to decoding almost every proxy conflict in the region.
Section 4. The fierce state response, prioritizing regime survival.
So the crucial point is that international blocs really only tell half the story. We have to look inward. Meet the fierce state. This is an authoritarian regime so fundamentally opposed to its own society that it survives almost exclusively through intimidation, coercion, powerful security forces, and just raw force.
The political scientist Nazi Ayubi captured this brilliantly. He noted that the fierce state, quote, is so opposed to society that it can only deal with it via coercion and raw force. This is such a foundational insight. What looks like a massive projection of power externally is very often just a regime frantically trying to mask its profound internal weakness and fear of its own people.
When you compare a strong state to a fierce state side by side, it triggers a real aha moment. A truly strong state works collaboratively with and through other centers of power within its society. A fierce state, on the other hand, entirely rejects societal collaboration. It relies entirely on repression. So this means that while these Middle Eastern states might appear super powerful with their vast security apparatuses, structurally, they are highly fragile, and fragility breeds desperate escalatory actions.
And finally, Section 5, a complex web of alliances, where rivals share common enemies.
Because these fierce states prioritize their own survival above literally everything else, their alliances shift rapidly, and to the outside observer, it often looks completely illogical. The traditional frameworks just fail us here. We're looking at a volatile board, where rivals frequently share common enemies and supposed allies actively fund and support opposing sides in the exact same conflict.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how paradoxical these partnerships can be. Look at Saudi Arabia and Qatar. They fiercely compete for influence in Egypt, yet they find themselves allied against Iran in Syria. Meanwhile, Iran acts as the primary lifeline for the Syrian regime, but simultaneously provides backing to Hamas. All while the United States urges regional partners to handle their own security so it can shrink its own military footprint, which in turn only makes those regional actors more anxious and erratic.
The direct result of all these chaotic, shifting alliances is literal, physical fragmentation. The colonial-era borders inherited from the Sykes-Picot Agreement, they're dissolving in real time. Nation-states like Syria, Libya, and Yemen simply no longer operate as unified actors across their recognized territories. When governments intentionally confuse genuine national security with the mere survival of their regime, they create massive power vacuums that practically invite endless proxy warfare.
And towering over all of this is a massive demographic time bomb. Young, globally connected populations are pushing back against old authoritarian models, furious at the lack of freedom and economic opportunity. The old status quo is failing, and as it does, the overarching risk of total regional implosion doesn't just remain, it continues to rapidly rise.
Which leaves us with this final, crucial question. As states fragment, borders dissolve, and alliances blur into paradoxes, is the Middle East setting the global trend for the future? Think about that for a second. Thanks for joining us on this explainer, and we'll see you next time.